Welcome to Taking Care of Business on News Talk 1180 KERN for the best in Saturday talk radio at 1 o'clock and on 1230 KGEO at 10 o'clock Saturday, and for the best in Wednesday talk radio on 1410 KERI, the Christian station. We are now on 1000 KKIM in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and also 3 times a week on the internet nationwide through knookmedia.com. Plus, if you can believe this, you can catch any of our shows for the last 4 years on the internet at Clay and Marty Show. Your host is Clay Koerner, and I'm Marty Pay, and our producer is Greg Held. Clay, that was a great show last week with former Senator Bob Smith from New Hampshire. It's sad that he lost to Scott Brown earlier this week, but he would have been another great senator. We could use somebody like him, and I'm sorry that the people in New Hampshire didn't see it that way.
Well, I wasn't here.
Yes, you were. That's true. You weren't here.
So how do I know it was a great show?
Because you listened to it.
I know. It was a good show. I just teasing you, Marty.
I know you are. I mean, I'm so nice to you, and you're always teasing me.
I know. I just heard how nice you were on the radio with my failure to know what the word meant. Let's talk about my favorite subject.
Well, one more thing. I wanted to thank our old friend Brian Johnson. He's Regional Director for the National Right to Life, and we are going to have him next month on again to talk about the election.
Yeah.
But today we've got a great lineup. Our second guest is a friend of yours, Diane Key from Benestar, and she's going to talk about Medi-Cal and Obamacare, your favorite subjects.
My favorite subject.
Yes. But our first guest in a moment is a man that I've come to admire over the years, the founder of Wallbuilders, an organization that represents Americans' forgotten history and heroes. But before we introduce him, there's a subject you and I wanted to talk about for a couple minutes.
What would that be?
That would be Mr. Obama and...
we heard a speech the other night.
Yes.
You know, here's something, Marty. When a football team gets on the field, they don't tell their play in advance. Mm-hmm. So that the defense can adjust to it. When a baseball team has a runner on first, they don't tell the other team that they're going to steal second. A basketball team doesn't lay out their strategy. Never have I ever heard of anyone going to war telling the people we're going to go to war with what we're going to do.
Mm-hmm.
Does that sound ridiculous?
Yeah, and I agree with you. And there's another comment that popped into my mind, and this is something that we've talked about with Waleed Ferris before. It's the old Afghan proverb: "You have all the watches, we have all the time." So if you broadcast what you're going to do, all they got to do is wait us out.
And isn't that what they did?
That's exactly what the North Vietnamese did in Vietnam, and we haven't learned from that lesson.
I think just bombing is not going to solve the problem.
No.
So, I don't know. I'm not involved, and I don't have the inside track that these people have. But the people running this country right now, they need some drastic help. They need to listen to the military advisors. Mm-hmm. A man who's got no experience in military or in business is running this country.
Yeah, and
he's destroying this country.
Yeah, and I heard a little clip on Rush Limbaugh the other day that I thought was excellent, talking about the speech. He talked about, and he played 10 or 15 broadcasters that had called him on Wednesday morning. They called Obama the reluctant warrior, trying to kind of pump him up a little bit. Well, I'm sorry, he's not a reluctant warrior. This is not the result of a George Bush mistake, which is what they're trying to portray it to be already. This is something that, we've got people that are not making any bones about the fact that they want to annihilate our way of life. We have to defend that.
You tell me that ISIS is not Islam?
Yeah. Can you
I don't
believe
that. You tell me that Islam is a religion of peace?
It can be, but not the way these guys are portraying it.
No, there's some just drastic problems here.
Yeah, when was the last time you saw Christians cut somebody's head off?
It just seems to me that this president is protecting the Muslim Islam group, and I don't understand why.
Yeah, there's no question about it. Yeah, and it's a travesty. Here it is on 9/11 was the other day, and the 13th anniversary, and we still haven't learned the lesson, unfortunately. And we're not in a better position than we were then. We're in a worse position than we were 13 years ago.
I don't feel safer since this president's been in office.
No question about it. I don't either.
I don't think about 90% of the population does either.
No, I totally agree. But anyways, our first guest today is a man that, as I said earlier, I've come to admire over the years, the founder of Wallbuilders, an organization that presents America's forgotten history and heroes. Dave Barton, welcome to Taking Care of Business.
Hey, thanks for having me. Great to be with you.
Well, Dave, as you and I were talking about off the air, you and I met 25 years ago at a Southern California Constitution Education Committee conference. You've been doing this a long time now.
Yeah, we both have, but we're not quite as old as the Constitution yet, so we've got another 200 years to go to match that. But it is cool that now today I see more people interested in the Constitution and learning it and learning what this content is that I've ever seen. I've seen more people ignoring it, but I've seen more people wanting to get back to it. So that's really healthy that 25 years later it's moving in the right direction.
That's true. And you're going to be here in Bakersfield next week for a fantastic event. In God We Trust. Let me just put out a phone number there. 800-381-3020. That's 800-381-3020 for anybody who wants to come to this In God We Trust event. It's on September 16th. And, David, you're going to be speaking along with Brad Dacus, so that'll be a pretty exciting event.
Yeah, it's going to be a great event. And, it's really cool that here's another one sweeping the nation because now the U.S. Congressional Prayer Caucus has picked up on this, and they're really on board. As a matter of fact, they, with Jackie Sullivan and others, have launched this campaign to have 1 million decals on cars in God We Trust.
Wow.
So it's really headed in a great direction.
That's fantastic. Tell us a little bit about your organization, Wallbuilders.
Wallbuilders, we exist, as we describe it, to present America's forgotten history and heroes with an emphasis on our moral, religious, and constitutional heritage. And so from what we do, we own about 100,000 documents from before 1812. So I have thousands of handwritten documents of George Washington, John Adams, Jefferson, those guys. And that's what we use and pull from to do resource and really just to get people reacquainted with our history and our heritage in particularly constitutional, religious, and moral areas.
Well, and it's interesting. Anything I've looked at, original document-wise, you look at the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and the document that the book that the Founding Fathers relied on more than anything was the Bible, hands down.
Yeah, hands down was the Bible. Political scientists have documented that is the most frequently quoted source in the founding era. 34% of all of the quotes came from the Bible. We specifically, for example, have 3 letters where that John Adams said we did separation of powers because of Jeremiah 17:9 in the Bible. You have the 2 clauses on Bill of Attainder in the Constitution that they said came out of Ezekiel 18:20. Just passage after passage of the Constitution they pointed to Bible verses on, and that was the most frequently cited source. Interestingly, the second most frequently cited source, and the Bible is 34%, the next most frequently cited source is only 8.2% of the quotes.
Wow.
So the Bible's cited 4 times more often than any other individual source that they used in the founding era.
De Tocqueville, a couple of years, 50, 60 years after the Constitution was written, looked at America and said, the role of the church in America is to hold the state to moral accountability. How come we've lost that? Where did we lose that?
Well, we've lost it in several ways. It's the frog boiling in water. We literally do not know the history of the church in America. I was just with a group of pastors from Washington, D.C. yesterday. About 2 or 3 times a year we bring a bunch of pastors in and we do a congressional briefing. And so we had these pastors in, and I just take them through the U.S. Capitol and show them all the statues in the Capitol and how many of those statues are pastors. But they don't recognize them because this pastor happened to be a president of the United States, and this pastor happened to be a major general, and this pastor happened to be the president of a university. And we're at the point now that the church is supposed to stay in that little 2-foot square behind the pulpit and not get outside the doors. And it's a whole different paradigm. The other thing I have a lot of fun with is we own thousands of the original sermons out of the First and Second Great Awakening. And so whether it's Whitefield sermons or Jonathan Edwards or whether it's Finney sermons, Lorenzo Dow, and I keep showing these pastors, said, look what we used to preach about in revivals. And I showed them the topics. And the problem we have today is church attendance in America over the last 20 years has gone from 54% weekly attendance down to 36%. And the reason is that even Christians say the Bible or church is not relevant. And that's the fault of the church. Because when you go back in the First Great Awakening, they preached sermons on all sorts of taxes, all sorts of marriage laws. They preached sermons on weather events. They preached sermons on education. They preached sermons on judiciary. They preached sermons on judicial practices and court practices because it's all in the Bible. There's 613 civil laws in the Bible. And so suddenly today we think that the Bible talks about nothing but conversion and salvation, and that's part of it. But my gosh, the Bible is filled with practical stuff. So it really is a matter of reawakening pastors and Christians and church to heritage, to history, and particularly to the Bible, how practical the Bible is in every one of these aspects.
Let's pick up there when we come back in a moment. We'll be back in a second on Taking Care of Business on Koerner Radio News Talk 1180.